Shruti-Smriti-Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat-Padam Shankaram Loka-Shankaram. So in the last session we were discussing three fundamental human temperaments, characteristics, which reflect in our actions, our thoughts, in our interactions with people around. That's called three gunas, three characteristics, called in Sanskrit Sattva Guna, Rajo Guna and Tamo Guna. Of these two, Rajo Guna and Tamo Guna, they are considered to be levels where we are not aware of our true nature. We act as if we are psychophysical beings. And when the truth is hidden from us, when it is concealed, we call it tamoguna. And when our true nature is not properly understood, a false idea is projected, it is called Rajoguna. So sometimes when we are not aware of our true nature, that lack of awareness manifests as inaction, inertia, a lack of proper perception, and when the truth is not properly understood, a false reality is projected. This is traditional Vedanta, which we already discussed, so I'm not going to repeat them again, but just to recapitulate some of the verses from Vivekachudamani. Vikshepa Shakti Rajasa Kriyatmika Yada Pravritti Prasada Purani Ragadayo Syaha Prabhavandi Nityam Dukkhadayo Ye Manaso Vikara. So one characteristic is Rajoguna. That is, when we are not aware of our true nature and when we think we are just psychophysical beings, then we think in terms of action, enjoyments, and so on. So when the mind is active, we are acting in the world outside. And when the mind is quiet, all actions come to an end. So when we are too active, when we are under the power of Rajoguna, so Raja, in a way, we cannot really define or understand it, but we can see how it works in our life, in our mind, in our emotions. When you feel a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of activism, a lot of energy. Along with that also comes a lot of desire, ambitions, mind always hyperactive. But that also creates restlessness, lack of peace of mind, anxieties and worries. So we are always agitating between our attempt to enjoy the things of this world and also the failure. Every person who wants to achieve things in this world is doomed to fail at one point or other, because life can never be a continuous succession of enjoyments. So every every experience of enjoyment is only a temporary absence of misery. So that's Vedanta. In one of the advanced books in Vedanta dialectics, Shankaracharya says, every empirical or worldly happiness is only a temporary absence of unhappiness. Or every experience of unhappiness is only a temporary, momentary absence of its opposite. What it means is, life is nothing but this rotation from, or the movement from happiness to unhappiness and back to happiness. So this creates agitations in the mind. So what happens is, we always in a state of hyperactivity, mentally or physically. We can never remain quite mentally and physically at the same time. So, in the Gita it is often said, one cannot keep quiet for a split second. We already discussed this, so that's why I'm not going to discuss again. Today we are going to discuss the sattvic aspect of the mind. That's more important. So I'm just trying to recollect some of what we discussed earlier. The next one is kama, krodho, lobha, dambha, abhyasuya, ahankara, ishya, matsaradi, khoraha, dharma ete, rajasa, pravritti, yasmadedat, rajo, bandha, hetuhu. So already we discussed earlier. Now I'm going to take up what we already began but did not complete. That is the verse number 117. Sattum vishuddham jalavat tathapi tabhyam militto saranaya kalpade. Yatra vibimba pradibimbidasan pragasetyarka ivahilam jadam. So pure sattva guna is explained here. So what is sattva guna? Sattva guna is what we should always try to aim at if you want peace of mind. So rajoguna implies activity, sometimes mindless activity, ambition, enthusiasm. Tamoguna implies inaction, inertia, lack of awareness. But sattva-guna, in real life, it implies a kind of spiritual level-headedness. You are able to do your things, but if things don't succeed, that failure doesn't shock us. That state of mind is called sattva-guna. These gunas can never be properly verified physically, but their impact and how it affects our mind can be very clearly demonstrated. So here, for example, sattam vishuddham. It is pure like water. Jalavat tathapi. Jala means water. In pure water, you can see the bottom. If the lake is filled with pure water, you can see the rock bottom of the lake. Tabhyam militva saranaya kalpate. But then what happens when the Rajoguna and Tamoguna combine? What happens? It leads to transmigration. So this, samsara but the transmigration in India, in Indian Hindu tradition, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, all religions of Indian subcontinent, they talk about the samsara. It is almost like a wheel. A wheel doesn't have a beginning or an end. A wheel continuously moves from one life, then goes through actions and inactions, success and failure, dukkha, pain and pleasure. Then we die and we are reborn again. This is called samsara. Samsara means constant movement. Samsarati, samsara. This is very well understood in Western culture. That's frequently we have to refer to Buddhism, because Buddhism has made this very clear. In Buddhism, the central principle is the samsara, which again can be understood when we keep in mind these two principles of law of karma and the doctrine of reincarnation, rebirth, and the impact of what we do in our destiny. So whatever we do with desire, that creates an impact on the mental system, becomes a vrittis, and the vrittis accumulated becomes a samskara, means a strong tendency that prompts our actions, thoughts and images. What we do in this life, according to this theory, is influenced by what we did in our previous life. It doesn't mean that we are all helpless tools in the hands of destiny. Law of karma is actually the very antithesis of fatalism. The law of karma tells you that any of us can change or begin to change or start taking steps to change our destiny if we want. If we are what we are today, because of what we were yesterday, what we did yesterday, then our tomorrow, our future can be shaped by our actions today. So you can, any of us can build our own destiny. So this is called Praditya Samutpada in Buddhism, the 12-link chain, where because of your desire, you develop the Trishna, you develop a strong link or desire to enjoy, and that also eventually leads to suffering also. So enjoyment and suffering. And then we go on doing things, and these karmas produce tendencies which are accumulated in the mental system called Chittam, both in Vedanta and also Buddhism. And that again creates the background for next life. And again we continue doing things. And this birth, life, suffering and enjoying, death and rebirth, this continues. It is called samsara. So, when Sattva-guna is combined with Rajoguna, which makes us do things, and again, Tamoguna makes us do wrong things frequently, that creates a mixture of good and bad result, and eventually this leads to this continuation of this wheel of samsara, samsara chakram it is called, in Vedanta and Yoga and Buddhism. So very interesting, Vedanta, Yoga and Buddhism, they all agree on these fundamental points. Life, the impact of law, the law of karma, and the doctrine of reincarnation. So what happens is, our true nature is sattva. Our true nature is actually beyond the three gunas, but the nearest human tendency to spiritual growth or spiritual evolution is sattva-guna. So we don't evolve from tamoguna to sattva-guna. From tamoguna, which is inertia, we become active, rajoguna, and then eventually we evolve to sattva-guna. So he says, together they cause the samsara. Yattatma bimba pratibimbitassan. What happens is then, but when the light of Atman gets reflected in the Sattva-guna, what happens? Then like the sun, it reflects. But Sattva-guna is something that we have to attain. So, sometimes this Sattva-guna can be understood only when we observe ourselves and others. Then we get an idea of how Sattva-guna influences our actions and behavior. There are many sources outside Vedanta, even Sanskrit literature. There are many verses which Kadasari and Panchatantra and so on. One of them may be quoted here. It is Bhartrihari. So Bhartrihari has written a number of important verses which in a way show this human tendency called, this Bhartrihari, three of it called Niti Sadagam, Vairagi Sadagam and so on. So there are one or two verses in Bhartrihari's book. As for Bhartrihari, maybe some of you may be familiar. Bhartrihari is the name of a great Indian philosopher and also a great figure in Indian Sanskrit literature. Lived in 2nd century, 3rd century, before Shankaracharya. Philosophically, he is considered to be a predecessor in the Vedantic lineage. Even before Shankaracharya, who is the author of this book, Vivekachudamani, there were many Advaitic philosophers. Sometimes there were Vedantic philosophers who are not necessarily Advaitins. Bhartrihari was one of the Advaitins, called Spoda Advaita, means linguistic non-dualism. So his book on Vedanta proper is not available, except it's called Vakyapadiyam, which is actually a book on, let's say, a kind of linguistic non-dualism. That's the only book on Advaitic tradition that we know about today, which is still available. It's called Spoda Advaita. But his popular contribution is these Chatakas, 100 verses. So there is one verse with Niti Chadagam where Bhartrihari tries to explain how a man with Sattva works. If you look around, we can see those people around. So one of these well-known verses is this. Ete Satpurushaha. So it means these are people endowed with sattvic qualities. So this Sattva has got two dimensions. One, how he behaves, how he feels within. Where does he stand as a man of morality? Secondly, how he interacts with others. So these two are interlinked, of course. So these are the good people, or sattvic temperament. Sometimes you find many of these junk food firms have brought a sattvic bowl, Buddha bowl. You know, if it contains fish and meat and eggs, it is not sattvic. So if it's vegetable, vegan, it is called sattvic bowl, we can see. Coconut water is sattvic. One of our devotees who comes frequently with a coconut water bottle says he's eating sattvic food. So in a way, sattvic means something that helps you in a state of serenity, close to nature, our temperament, more humane, more compassionate. So here he says, Ete Satpurushaha. These are people endowed with Sattva. Parartha Ghadagaha means those who are interested, those who try to help others. Swarthan Parityajyaye. Say they give up their own interests. So they don't bother about their own selfish desires. They don't try to put their own interest above others. They put others' interest above their own interests. Swarthan Parityajyaye. They give up their own selfish interests. Parartha Ghadaga means they're actually more interested in doing things for others, in trying to help others. It really means maybe they are trying to help others economically, Parartha Ghadaga, that's one interpretation. But in the general sense, it means they place others' interests above their own interests. Samanyastu. Then there are people who are mediocre. They are not bad, but they are not exceptionally good. So you know, the sattvic people sometimes, like Buddha. So Buddha frequently, you know, even in Bhartagiri also, in some of the interpretative writings, they place Buddha as an embodiment of this Sattva Guna, because they recite, they refer to the Jataka tales where you can find Buddha slowly evolving, going through 543 life cycles. In each of these life cycles, Buddha displays some unique sattvic qualities, like giving up his own life for the sake of others, and so on. So technically, his name is frequently mentioned by others. So, Ete Satpurushaha Parartha Ghadagaha Swarthan Parityajya. They give up their own selfish interests. Ye Samanyastu. Then there are those who are mediocre people. Well, they may try to help others, but they don't go out of their way to help others. They don't give up their own interests. So keeping their own interest intact without suffering too much, without paying a very heavy price for helping others, they try to help other people. And these are two types of people who are somewhat sattvic in nature. One exceptional example is those, the category to which people who are exceptionally compassionate, helpful, you know, they Satpurushaha Parartha Ghadagaha. So the important qualities, Swarthan Parityajya. They give up, they sacrifice their own selfish interest, because they place others above their own interest. Then there are mediocre people, just one stage, one phase below, Samanyaha, common people. What they do, Parartha Mudhyama Brudaha, Swartha Avirodhena. So they won't do anything that may affect their own interests. They take care of their own interests very well. So that's why the Swartha Avirodhena. They won't give up their own interest. At the same time, they are ready to help others. Parartha Udyama Brata. I mean, they help others. And then there are those who are not up to no good. So they say, Temi Manusha Rakshasaha Paradhanam Swarthai Nigrantiye. The third category, they are called the Manusha Rakshasaha, the demons in human shape. They're human, when you look at them, they look like human beings, but then they are very evil, up to no good. So, Temi Manusha Rakshasaha. They what they do, Paradhanam Swarthai Nigranti. What they do, for them, every action, every effort is to exploit others. They just want to make use of other people's wealth and resources for their own prosperity. So everything, for their concern, is meant to serve their own selfish interests. They don't ever think of other people's interest. They always, for them, the whole world is an opportunity. Whole life is an opportunity to exploit others and thereby promote their own selfish interests. The third category. And Bhartrihari calls those people Manusha Rakshasa, they are demons in human shape. Then finally there is a final certificate is given, the Nobel Prize. What he is giving is, he says, Yetu Granthi Nirarthagam Paradhanam Te Kechan Jani Makhe. The early three categories, you can see the highest, the most advanced, most sattvic people, they give up their own interest and help others. So, they Satpurushaha, good people. And then there are those who are one stage below, Samanya, common people. Well, they will certainly help others. They will make sure that their own interests are not sacrificed. So they make their own profit, ready to start a company, but they won't be willing to go out of the way to help others. Third category, for them, everything in this world is an opportunity to promote their own interests, even while sacrificing other people's interests. They're called demons in human shape. Then the last category, the poet tells you, well, I don't know what to call them. So the highest, you cannot really define them, they are so great. The lowest also, you cannot understand them. Yetu Granthi Nirarthagam Paradhanam Teke Najani Mahe. There are those, they will always be trying to do evil against others. Paradhanam Nigranthi means actually, this may be in the immediate interpretation, you get reference to other people's wealth. But generally speaking, they always are looking for an opportunity to harm other people. They don't want to achieve anything thereby. They only somehow, when somebody is suffering, they are very happy. So sometimes, when we are neighbors, when your neighbor has got advanced, costly, he is buying a Bentley or Rolls Royce. Well, you are only an ordinary car. Somehow you want to make sure that the other man's car is broken, with an accident. Your car also will be lost, but it doesn't matter. Somehow they are always bent upon looking for an opportunity to harm other people. They don't care if thereby they themselves happen to suffer. So the four categories of human temperaments that this great poet is depicting in this book. So you can see an example, Sattvam Vishuddham Jalavattathapi. Of course, there are many other verses there which demonstrate this sattvic quality. So Sattva Guna, Rajo Guna and Tamo Guna. You may write books and write volumes, but you can never clearly understand because fundamentally these human tendencies can be detected when you observe people interacting with others, doing things in this world. Of course, the Bhartrihari is in the same work. He gives another interesting example. he takes example from nature. So one example is from human temperaments, and then he gives another example. So just there's the only way for us to understand these qualities. When Buddha was asked this question by Ananda, I mean, he wanted to know how do people do wrong things, how people don't show compassion to others. So Buddha's answer was that he says, it is difficult to understand human temperament to explain except by giving examples of human activities. That's what he says. So another line is, another verse from the same work, Padmakaram dinagaro vigajam karoti chandro vikasayati kairava chakravalam na abhyarthido jaladharobi jalam dadadi santaswayam parahide vihitabhiyogaha. This is another interesting example. It is an example, analogy from nature. So it says, for example, in the morning, when the sun rises in the east, you find these lotus flowers. They begin to blossom. They slowly open the petals and they become full-fledged flowers. Again, some other flowers, when the moonlight, when the moon rises in the sky, that also causes certain other kind of plants to blossom their flowers. And similarly, and another example, na abhyarthido jaladharobi. The jaladhara means these clouds. Clouds bring rainwater, or clouds begin to rain by its own nature, because its very nature is compassionate, sattvic. So jalam dadadi, na abhyarthido. You don't request the clouds to bring water, to pour, to come back, to bless the world by bringing rainfall is the innate, inherent characteristic of clouds. So it's by its very nature. The Santa Swayam Parahide Vihidabhiyogaha. So people who are endowed with sattvic qualities, by their innate nature, by the inherent nature, they will always engage in doing good for others, even without looking for their own interest. So these are very, very interesting, profound verses which explain 4 levels of human temperament. Now, of course, in this call also, which he just referred to, there is another very important verse that Shankaracharya wants to teach, as a warning. He says, people who may have a lot of book knowledge, lot of philosophical wisdom, they may be able to do great things in this world, but unless they are always alert and vigilant about their own nature, how they act and behave in this world, they are not immune to problems in their life. So I can explain this verse and we can come to the next one. Prajnavanapi. So a very learned person who has a lot of wisdom, lot of intelligence, very learned. Panditopi. So Pandita has got different meaning, but what you call Rudhi meaning, conventional meaning is somebody who is learned. We don't go to spiritual meaning, which is profound in Vedanta. So somebody who is wise, prajna means inner wisdom. You may call it in plain English, you may call it spiritual common sense. That is prajna. So spiritual common sense is an innate wisdom, a spark of wisdom which guides our actions, thoughts and words and behavior. When we are facing a situation where we are likely to do something which may be stupid or wrong, then our own mind signals it's not okay. When we can train our mind to give a red signal warning to ourselves, this is not the right thing to do. That is called prajna. Prajna has got two meanings. One is the highest spiritual wisdom of a mystic spiritual teacher, or the simple common sense, going beyond information, knowledge, we reach scholarship, we reach wisdom, where we can manage our own resources, our own learning, our own wealth, our whatever resources we have. It's good to have them, but it's more important to know how to make proper use of these resources and how to prevent, how to resist the temptation to make improper use of our resources. So that's called prajna, wisdom. So prajna, somebody may be quite learned in that sense, not a mystic, not prajna with higher spiritual sense, Vedantic sense, but somebody who has well learned wisdom. Yes, wisdom is the maturity there. Pandita will be a learned person. Chaduraha means he will be very clever, dexterous. Chadurobi atyanta sukshmartha drik. So this is Sanskrit word, you know. Those who can read a book or a scripture and get a superficial meaning, that's one level. But those who can read a scripture or a book and can understand properly the essence, the subtle meaning, the true implication of that work. They are sukshmartha drik, those who can understand the meaning of what you learn. Then if you say Vyalidas tamasa, so Vyalidas tamasa, so what happens, you know, he may be caught by a crocodile. Naveti bhugudha sambodhido bispudam. The point is, he may be overpowered by tamoguna and rajoguna, like which they behave like they're like a crocodile. So even if we may be fully established in our theoretical understanding of human life, we should do certain things, we should not do certain things, do's and don'ts, morality, ethics, proper behavior, all these we may know, and we may be very dexterous, we can read and understand the essence of meaning, the sushmartha drik. Still what happens, you know, we may be caught by tamasa. Tamasa means ignorance. The very opposite of sattva-guna is tamoguna. Ignorance, inertia, pramada means total misunderstanding, mind being clouded by confusions, inability to understand what is right, what is wrong, etc. So this ignorance can act like a crocodile that can catch you and drag you into a deep pool of water. And this happens even to people who are intelligent, learned, and clever. Why? Because we are not alert or vigilant in our life. So, a theoretical understanding of Sattva-guna is not enough, but we should also become vigilant. Every moment we should be able to understand where we go, what we do, how we speak. So it says, then it can be overpowered by tamoguna. What happened? Even though it's clearly explained in various ways. So this means they consider the unreal as real. So bhranti arobidameva sadhu kalayedit yalambani tadgunan handa asau prabala duranda tamasa shakti mahatyavruti. So tamoguna acting as a crocodile that may come and overpower if we are not vigilant. So that's why Sattva-guna is something that can guide us, that can help us to do the right thing on the one hand, and secondly, can prevent us from doing the wrong thing. In the same verse, there is another well-known verse which we don't have time to discuss, but it's very important. Elsewhere, Shankaracharya says, Lakshachudam, like it begins. He gives a very interesting example on how to protect our own sattvic qualities. So he gives the example of a ladder. Suppose you are standing at the top of a ladder, or a staircase is a better example, a staircase. Now, let's say a child is playing with a ball, and the ball falls through his fingers and hits the first stage of the ladder or the staircase upstairs. Now, the teacher used a great point, although Shankaracharya is considered a great poet, as I mentioned earlier. So he gives a graphic example of how human mind works. So he says, if the ball hits the first staircase, it won't stop there. Slowly it will descend, and finally it reaches the rock bottom, it hits the ground, it won't stop midway. So like that, if we are not very alert and vigilant in our life, even if we know a lot of things theoretically, we want to live a sattvic life, still we should always be vigilant, because the first mistake will not leave us there. It will take us slowly by stage, will take the extreme rock bottom. And this we can very easily explain in the light of modern times, information technology, YouTube and things like that. If our mind is caught by a small picture or a video or maybe a very toxic presentation of life and its goal is happening all over the world today, that don't stop there, because this video or this talk that we are listening to, which may be very bad for humanity, can leave an impression on our mind, and that can lead us to doing certain things, and that can completely transform our life. So every tool of modern science and technology is a blessing if we can make use of it. But to be able to make proper use of it, we need the sattvic qualities. And sattva-guna, it works as an inner spiritual mechanism, a filtering mechanism. It filters out all the toxic material, because every minute, every second, our mind is dragging our five senses in all directions. In the same Shankaracharya mentions, Shabdadhi Panchabhireva Pancha, Panchattamavusa Gunena Baddhaha, Kuranga Madanga Padanga Meena Bhranga Nara Panjabhi Anchitakim. It's a good example, another important graphic description of how Sattva-guna is important, why it's so important in our life. So in this verse, the great teacher tells you, for human beings, all the five senses are functioning simultaneously, together. In the eyes, the vision, the sight of eyes, the smell that we get through nostrils, so that the touch of the skin, so Tvagindriya, Vagindriya, the Sanendriya, Sparsanendriya, Sravanendriya, the sense of hearing, ears, the sense of seeing, the eyes, the sense of smell, the nostrils, the sense of listening, the sense of taste, and the sense of touch. All these five senses are simultaneously, every moment, being driven to different objects of desire. Mind never keeps quiet. Mind is always driving these five senses in all directions. So in this verse, there is a very beautiful analogy, description. See, a hunter is trying to hunt deer. So in ancient times, they used to play music, the flute. Listening to this music sound, that deer will come out of his maybe hiding in a bush or a cave, it comes out and it is killed. The hunter shoots an arrow. The deer is killed. So one sense, the sense of hearing, is fatal. It kills the deer. It's killed by the hunter and is eaten. So the Panjabireva, Panjatam, Kuranga Madanga, Kuranga means deer, Madanga means elephants. Elephants, elephant herds, they walk in groups, they touch each other. The mother elephant will be always touching the calf to protect it from being maybe attacked by other wild animals like lions. So what happens, and as they go, they are not vigilant, so they fall in a pit. That's how elephants are captured, enslaved, and frequently killed. The Kuranga, Madanga, Patanga, moth, these little flies, they come in large numbers during rainy season in the tropical countries. So people start a fire, and seeing the blaze, the flame of the fire, these moths, they fly in that direction and they are killed in multiple numbers. Kuranga, Madanga, Patanga, Meena, fish. In ancient times, they be caught by bait. So they are caught by the sense of taste. And then Bringa, certain small little insects. They go about in flower gardens. They smell, and they go and sit in a flower plant, attracted by the smell, and at that time they may be killed by other animals. So Shankaracharya says, Kuranga, Madanga, Padanga, Meena, Bringa. So the deer, the elephant, and the moth, and the fish, and these small little insects found in flower gardens. So they are all caught and killed. They lose their life because they are caught by one sense. For Narapanjabhiranjitakim. As for human beings, all the five senses are working together. The mind is always driving all these five senses in all directions. So what to speak of the fate of human beings? So the only way for us to live a proper life, free from dangers of material or worldly desires, and in the case of, you can see the fate of the elephant, the fate of the moth, the fate of the deer. The only way for us to live in this world, happy within and harmonious outside, enjoying contentment within and enjoying harmony with everyone else, is to develop sattvic qualities. So when we develop the sattvic quality, what happens is we are developing a spiritual filtering mechanism that will help us to filter out all the toxic material and keep our mind always focused on sattvic things. So it's a very important discussion. We'll continue this discussion in the next class. Now we can have interaction. You are most welcome. Yeah.
Swamiji, would you give an example of nirguna?
Yeah. Okay. So, these three qualities, they belong to more or less empirical level. How to live in this world with sattvic qualities. Nirguna is the transcendental level that goes beyond all the three gunas. So long as we are within the level of these three gunas, including Sattva Guna, we have not reached the highest spiritual enlightenment. So going beyond all these three gunas is the only way to be totally enlightened. But the Sattva-guna is the door, the entrance to this higher level of spiritual evolution. That's why one characteristic of all spiritually enlightened people is they'll be always functioning at sattvic level, not at the rajoguna, tamoguna. Because at the empirical level, you find them always functioning at the sattvic level. Any great spiritual person, Sri Ramakrishna, Buddha or Shankara or Christ, any of them you find, how they acted in this world. They have reached what you said just now, nirguna means gunatita, going beyond, transcending all the three gunas. It is technically called nirguna. Nirguna doesn't mean devoid of all gunas, but gunatita, transcending the empirical framework of three gunas. These three gunas describe human tendencies and characteristics as we live in this world, in our interaction with others. Sattvic quality helps you to live in this world, to do things properly, without being caught by the ambitions of Rajoguna or by the ignorance and stupidity of Tamoguna. So when you reach a Nirguna level, Gunadita level, Swami Tattwamayananda, it's an example. It means beyond the three gunas, transcending three gunas, trans-empirical, so to speak. What it implies is, when you reach the highest state of spiritual evolution, then you can never descend below Sattva-guna. When you function in this world at the empirical level, it is sattvic qualities. That's why in Sri Ramakrishna's life, the biographer says, he lived in this world, he was an enlightened person, but he was living very much like us in this world, with all the human requirement, human environment, but he always functioned at the sattvic level, no rajasic or tamoguna level. So going beyond the three gunas is called nirguna, and that means the highest spiritual enlightenment. So you can see, I refer to Buddha not because he's the only example. Buddha is so well read about and well discussed in American context in contemporary age. So if you read the rebirth stories, what we call the Jataka tales, you find these 543 life cycles. In each of these life cycles, Buddha displays some unique sattvic qualities. He was living this world, he was born in so many different situations. He was born as a monkey, the great monkey king, who sacrificed his life for saving other monkeys. He was born in so many multiple roles in society. 543 life cycles, how many centuries, so to speak? Thousands of years. Before he became Gautama Buddha, was born in 560 BC, the great Gautama Buddha. Before that, he had 543 life cycles. In each of these, he displayed some unique quality by living in this world. That is sattvic. So he was beyond all the three gunas. Okay, thank you, Christine. Yeah.
Swamiji, there is a similar question online.
Yeah.
So in our daily life, our actions and reactions reflect a combination of tamaguna, rajaguna, and sattva-guna. So how do we characterize anyone to be a sattvic person or rajasic person or tamasic person? Because our reactions depend on the type of situations or our tendencies that react differently in different situations.
Yeah.
So how do we evolve from tamaguna to rajaguna to sattva-guna, because our reactions are generally a combination?
Yeah. Really speaking, you need a lot of rajoguna to be efficient, to be able to live in this modern world. You have to be very, very efficient. You should have a lot of rajoguna, really speaking, because rajoguna implies dynamism, efficiency, enthusiasm, what you call all executive, managerial expertise, all require rajoguna. So it's important. What happens is when we try to develop sattva-guna, the Sattva-guna acts as a filtering mechanism, as a restraining system within. So when our ambition goes out of the way, when we are driven by the Rajoguna, the Sattvic quality will tell you enough. It will have a restraining effect on our own actions. That's what happens when we develop Sattvic qualities. A Sattvic person may be very efficient. You know, I tell you, two of the most efficient human beings the world has witnessed the history of humanity. One is Shankara, the other is Buddha and Vivekananda. Now look at the life of the author of this small tiny book. This book is a very, very elementary foundational introductory work to Vedanta. And he wrote more than 161 books, including the most wonderful Sanskrit poetry. 91 very important poetical classics, philosophical works, commentaries and so on. I'll go into details. And then he founded 10 monastic orders. One of the monastic orders we belong to. Another monastic order, this Chinmaya mission belonged to. There is not one monastic tradition in India that doesn't belong to one of the 10 monastic orders that Shankaracharya founded. And he traveled all over Indian subcontinent 4 times. And they installed hundreds of temples, 4 great monasteries and 4 distant corners of India, one in extreme Indo-Tibetan border, the other one is deep south, east and west. And then all that you find in Hinduism today, in a way you can find the imprint of Shankaracharya. The great debater, scholar, poet, a system builder, founder of monastic organizations, and 32 years. His legacy still continues. Swami Vivekananda came in 1893. He was giving a modern version, a modern interpretation of Shankaracharya's philosophy. Then Buddha. Buddha, of course, had a long life, 80 years, more than 80 years. Now Christ, for example, of course, he did not do so much physically, but his impact, influence continues even to the 21st century. So all these great men who were not graduates of Harvard management school or any, Stanford business school or anything, you know what they did, what they achieved within very short lifespan. Shankaracharya, 32 years. And you know, he had finished all his writings when he was studying in 11th grade. By 16 years, he had finished all the classical writings, which today in India, the pot-bellied old Brahmins take 40 years to study and understand. So when Vivekananda, he lived only for 39 years, the impact continues. So you find there is a different kind of dealing with our everyday responsibilities and activities. What does it mean? You can be efficient, you can be active, you can deal with your modern problems if you are working in a factory, working in a modern office, if you are the executive, you can deal with all these problems. Still you can be wise, you can be calm. You don't have to take 4 capsules to take 4 hours sleep. You need not necessarily be anxious because you have work to do. Even this temple was built by Swami Tattwamayananda. He worked in the city only for 13 years. So you can be always active, but you can be always sattvic. Now Sattva-guna is the name of the temperament of a spiritually enlightened person as he functions in this world. Sattva-guna doesn't mean absence of Rajoguna. It means Rajoguna plus this filtering mechanism. When you work hard, when you have a lot of things to do, when you become too anxious, this Sattva-guna will help you. Well, there is a higher ideal, So you can combine action with contemplation. The contemplation aspect comes from Sattva-guna. The action aspect comes from Rajoguna. Without Rajoguna, you cannot live in this world. Impossible. But if you have only Rajoguna, no Sattva-guna, then you'll be a slave. You'll be caught and trapped. You become what we call victims of success. Billions of dollars, big job, but life completely broken, inner life. They're victims of success, victims of abundance. So that can be avoided when you can combine action, Rajoguna, and contemplation. This comes from Sattva-guna. Thank you. Good question. Yeah, anything?
There's one more online question. What is the role of bhakti yoga and karma yoga in helping us evolve from tamas to rajas to tamas?
No, that is a very, very practical question. According to Vedanta, the only way for you to develop Sattva-guna is karma yoga. You know, there is an important principle. When we do something, even at the physical level, when we are physically doing something, that good action, sattvic action, any kind of activity without a selfish motive, with total dedication, with a sense of sanctity and sacredness, can generate spiritual asset. And that can help us to become more and more sattvic, really speaking. So Sattva-guna anyone can develop. People sometimes do a lot of things and they tell themselves, I did a lot of things. Then they become anxious about it. Suppose we are always active with all attention and care, and then, well, this is part of my duty. You can dismiss that action part mentally. So every unselfish activity produces a sattvic quality. It will take you one step towards sattvic qualities. Every unselfish activity. In fact, the great Shankaracharya says, karma nishthayaha chitta suddhidvarena purushārtha hedutvam na swatantrena jnana nishthato swatantrena purushārtha hetuku anyan apeksha. In the Gita commentary, Shankaracharya says, karma-nishtha means any kind, any activity, anything that you do in your life. You are working in an office, in a factory, in a hospital, you are a driver or doctor, engineer, whatever be your profession. Along with that, you can bring into your life this contemplation aspect. Action can combine with contemplation. Then what happens is that action can produce a sattvic quality. We may not be aware of it. Whenever we bring an element of Sattva-guna or unselfishness, which is an aspect of Sattva-guna. The Sattva-guna, as I mentioned, you cannot physically you cannot see that. But its manifestation you can see everywhere. Wherever there is an act of compassion, wisdom, unselfishness, sanctity, self-sacrifice, it's a manifestation of Sattva-guna. Any such activity can bring our life, take our life forward. It can generate sattvic quality. So, karma yoga or bhakti yoga, prayer also. According to Ramanuja is a non-Advaitic philosopher. You know, he said, at the beginning, a devotee may go to a temple or a church. He may pray for job, wealth, modern times, whatever they need, he may pray. That is okay. And then, when he prays, he has all freedom to pray for very material things. A poor man can pray for wealth. An unemployed person can pray for employment, for job. So anything you can do. But that is only the beginning, the kindergarten of bhakti or devotion. That is not wrong. You don't stop your education with the kindergarten, the primary school. You go to kindergarten with strong conviction that you should go beyond that. So it's okay to pray at the beginning of bhakti, your devotional practices. Pray for worldly things, no, nothing wrong. Now, if you do that with all attention, with all what you call shraddha, sincerity, then you find your prayer as being answered. And then you continue doing the same prayer without a selfish motive. So, this is Ramanuja's commentary. Udara sarvai vaidhi, artho jijnasu artharthi jnani. So, 4 levels of bhakti. At the beginning, you may begin as somebody who is pleading to God for certain needs that you need. Nothing wrong in it. But that will slowly take you beyond that stage. So bhakti also can help you to bring in this contemplation aspect in our life. Bhakti also can help you to develop sattvic qualities. That's all right. Okay, thank you. But one important point in contemporary times, which I want to stress and then conclude. When you talk about bhakti and devotion to God, we should be careful. What is our idea of God? Our idea of God should be compassionate. That God is God of the whole humanity, not God of my own religion. Then it doesn't work. When you think of God as a God of the entire humanity, not a God who listens to me and won't listen to others who worship Him differently, that won't work. So that kind of a Vedantic idea of God will help you to acquire sattvic qualities. I hope we may continue the next session. Any more?
We have one more online question.
Okay. Last question. Yeah, thank you.
So this is a very fundamental question. So the question is, how can one on his own learn the knowledge of Hinduism? Can one practice on their own? Or where does one begin?
Okay. So I cannot recommend a better book than some of the writings of Swami Vivekananda. Because Swami Vivekananda interpreted Hinduism for the modern post-industrial age. So Swami Vivekananda's lectures, Raj Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, his small tiny books on yoga is a very wonderful introduction to Hinduism. And if you want to begin, the beginning of the beginning can be Vivekananda's Chicago address. It's less than 2 pages, 1.5 pages. The great Chicago, there is small tiny book is available in a bookstore, Chicago Addresses by Swami Vivekananda, because he introduced and interpreted Hinduism as a universal spiritual aspiration, which is universal in its relevance and application. So you can begin with Swami Vivekananda's Chicago Addresses, which may be around less than 20 pages, all the speeches put together in a single tiny book. And if you want to read more, you can read his books on yogas, Raj Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and so on. Okay? Thank you for the question. Okay. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.